Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, and we've got another session with regards to our AGS Airline Ground Services Digital Summit. Got two great guests here with me today, and firstly we've got Graciela Gonzalez Cervantes, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Graciela?
Yes.
Not too bad?
No, that was good.
Okay, right. Welcome on board. And Graciela is the International Airports Contract Specialist with Aeromexico, so thank you very much for joining us. And with her today is Nick Yeadon, who's the CEO of Air Dispatch. Nick, lovely to have you on board, sir.
Thank you.
Really appreciated. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit of embarrassment. I'm going to go through your bios, so as long as your family and friends aren't listening, it doesn't really matter, but if they are, they'll know the truth. So I'm just going to go through it now, okay? So Graciela first, lawyer, having graduated from Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico, and Graciela has plenty of experience in negotiating and drafting contracts within different industries. Also being responsible for ground handling, procurement at Aeromexico for over 3 years, and IATA training has included contract law, SLA, SGHA, effective negotiation behaviours and procurement and contracts management. And you also formulated the SLA for ground handling services for Aeromexico's SGHA and is responsible for following up on the quality of international services delivered to the carrier. So I definitely have got some points I'm going to put to you, Graciela, because their subject matter is very close to my heart, especially the SLA and certain self-assessments as part of that reporting structure. So I'm looking forward to that. Then yeah. And then we've got, I'm a bit worried now. I think I'm going to have a little bit of a tough time there. And then we've got Nick. So Nick worked in aviation for over 30 years, holding several roles at all levels within the industry. Currently the CEO of Air Dispatch, a Donata-owned centralized load control business. Passionate about simplifying the business. My goodness me, we should all be. So good man there. And believes in the maxim, a simple process rigorously enforced. And you and your team and all clients to remove unnecessary tasks to free up the load controller to undertake the safety related tasks of ensuring the aircraft stays within the safe limits required for flight. And Nick, you've also worked extensively with IATA, EASA and other industry bodies to develop best practice in several areas. And Air Dispatch was formed in 2007 and is the world leader in centralized load control, providing services to several tier 1 carriers across the globe. And in 2019 became the first company to produce load sheets for more than 1 million flights in a single calendar year. So fair play to you, Nick. Great, well done, and well done to you both. So now the good thing is I don't have to do too much talking, but the segment that we're actually looking at is now what is now expected on digitisation and data sharing to ensure operational efficiencies and quality of service delivery. So there's been an awful lot of talk about collaboration, about data sharing, but it's like being a child in a playground. Everybody with a bag of sweets and they say, do you want one of mine? You say, yes, I do. And then when they come from one of yours, you're a little bit, you protect it and you don't want to share it so much. But I really think now the lessons that have been learned from this last 18 months, collaboration, data sharing, and responding correctly as part of a bigger community is the only way we're going to do better now moving forward. The pandemic itself has probably sped things up as far as acceptance of digitization, automation, etc. Probably 10 years in the last 2 years we've moved so far forward, but we've now got to do it in a very controlled and in the bios there both of you refer to doing things simply and also formally. That's the only way forward. So now we've got a little presentation from each of you. I understand, Nick, you're going first.
Yep.
Okay, so over to you, sir. So Salem, if you want to do the magic behind the scenes and pull up Nick's presentation, and Graciela, feel free at any point for comment during the course of the presentation.
Okay, for me, it's doing more with the same. I think, and I'll come on to it in a minute, there's labour shortages everywhere and we have to make sure that we're able to cope with the recovery as it comes. If we just move on to the next slide. Air Dispatch is a Donata-owned business, has been since 2017, and we have three sites in Europe. It's ISAGO certified, and it's specializes in load control. 16 customers, over 6 million load sheets, and we look after aircraft and flights in every time zone on the planet that has land on it. If we just move on now. So I've written a white paper in conjunction with my safety manager, Jakob, and I just want to touch on a few points out of the white paper, because we need to do things differently on the other side of the pandemic. And so on to the next slide. So we're in a situation post-pandemic where labor is in short supply globally, and we have to do more with the same as we grow back. It's very clear, talking to people right the way across the industry, that there are just not the people there to undertake the work. And if we look at the process, the actual load control process, if you manage to save 1 minute on every flight, that's the equivalent to a single person, a whole headcount for a full year.
Yeah.
And this is not about people losing their jobs or anything like that. There simply are not the people to do it. And it's a very simple way to save a person. And one of the areas that is really sort of up there at the moment is manually rekeying data. And in the example, if we rekey the cargo data from a cargo system to a weight and balance system, all the pallet weights, all the dangerous goods data, that can take upwards of 30 minutes. And if you're talking about 90,000 flights annually, that's 45,000 unnecessarily wasted hours.
Yeah.
And you really don't need to do that now. There should be bridging between cargo systems and load control systems. And I think one of the areas which we're missing out on in the business at the moment is these bridges from one system to another. And you've got issues between handling agents and airlines, who maybe the handling agent has a cargo system, its own cargo system, and the airline has its own load control system. We need to get all those systems talking together, because not only is it going to save you an awful lot of time, but it's actually going to make things a lot safer. Because if you rekey data, then sooner or later you're going to make an error in that rekeying. And it's really, really important in load control. You know, the only reason for doing a load sheet is safety. Load sheets wouldn't exist if they weren't required for a safety reason. Yeah. So you know, in my business, I don't want to employ people looking after work and completing tasks that don't need to be completed. It takes a second for one system to send the data to another. It may cost some money to build the bridge. And quite often when you're talking to carriers, the actual capex for building the bridges, I don't think that's always offset against the labor cost that could be saved by that bridge being in place, and the improvement in safety through that bridge being in place.
Yeah, Nick, can I ask you something there? I mean,
yeah.
Everything that you said, I fully agree, and it's all logic and common sense. But, you know, in this day and age now, where people, one of the prerequisites of having a system should be that it's able to communicate and talk with other systems, you know, APIs, etc. Because otherwise we're making things so much more complex and harder to work. So in the future, in this post-pandemic, there should be prerequisites of what you do within your contracts, because that can't be an excuse for people not doing something. And like you said, for being more manually focused and also open to making errors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's slightly more complex than that, as I found out and continue to find out. You've got pull bridges, you've got push bridges, you've got pull push bridges. So is information just being passed out as a message one way to a system? Is the other system that's receiving it able to go back and interrogate it? And if I use the example, say, of a check-in system, so a lot of reservation systems have a check-in system attached to it, but not as many have a load control system attached to them. So you can be finding that you're in a situation where the check-in has been completed, but you need to push that check-in data into the load control system. And it may be that the load control system needs to tell the check-in system that it needs some data. If you're blocking seats for weight and balance, for instance, you need to be able to push data up to the check-in system to block those seats, as well as receive information from the check-in system. And all that's real time. You kind of need it in real time. And so it can get much more complex. And there are a number of different systems out there, and there are not yet industry standard bridges between those systems.
Which is shocking.
Which there we go. It will take some time, I think, to build those bridges. And that's to my next point. It's maximize the use of that system-to-system messaging. There is no reason for rekeying data in the 21st century. There's got to be a lot of effort put into building these bridges, because it is simpler, safer, and in the end, it's cheaper. And it's, as I say, it's not about anyone losing their jobs. It's about being able to cope with the ramp up. And the load controllers will have to do more. But in order to do that more and to do their job, the load control job, it's really important that they have the ability, they are not required to. Sorry, I'll start again. It's really important that those load controllers are not required to be carrying out unnecessary tasks.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I mean, it's stressful enough. I did my weight and balance training with Lufthansa years ago, 6 weeks, and then did the checkouts in Shannon and Sharjah. And I know what it's like when you look at the first 747 that you trim yourself and you think, oh my God. But it's an incredible feeling of satisfaction. But one thing I want to ask you, please now, Nick, is as you started to take on the contracts and you see yourself, pre-COVID, there was an awful lot of protectionism, people worrying about losing jobs because of technology, etc., which really is not correct, because they could actually go on to do a lot more and have more exposure to front end process, mid process, and end process, and understand the supply chain that they're in a lot better and make it more satisfying for them. But the fact that, and you said like more with the same, or I think most people would probably like to do more with less. But if people look at it in a very positive way, one of the challenges we've got in the industry now is there's been a huge brain drain. So, that skill, that experience, whether it's people wanting to do things differently with their life, different sort of pressures, new opportunities, whatever it is, those people aren't going to come back. So the industry has lost an awful lot. We've got to attract a new generation of people who want to be in aviation and supply chain. Yep. And we've got to attract people from other industries who bring their specialization across, because they can see either an ideal fit or an improvement. So we have to use technology and digitization, and we've got to become more capable in that field. So that to me is a given. But now, when you started to gain contracts, what were the biggest challenges when you were doing your pitch or when you were trying to secure that contract?
We've always done it this way. Yeah. That's always been the biggest challenge. And when we came into the load control environment, we came in at the same time as the first drag and drop Windows technology was coming in, and it was replacing the green screen technology.
Okay, yeah.
And so there was a big push to use that drag and drop technology, and yet there were airlines out there that were more or less saying, we want it to look like our old system and we want it to work like our old system. And if that's your approach, if we want it to look and work like our old system, maybe your old system is the optimum for you. Actually, you should be grasping that new technology. I think it's really important to bring some of the, and I'm now old enough to say it, kids that are joining the industry into that team that's building the procedures for the new system. Because we had one carrier that came to us with a DOS-based system, and my load controllers are all in their early 20s, and we were having to explain what DOS was, and it was I've got something much better than this Windows technology. It's called DOS, and the screen's in green, and they're looking and going, just wow, did this really exist? So you've got to harness the skills of that younger generation coming through in building the processes. Getting a team that's got that mix in of sort of knowledgeable people with experience, and some of the newer people are willing to say, well, why do we do it that way? Couldn't we just do this? I think is a really key part of developing that new process. Oh yeah, no, the why I think is such an incredible word that should be used more often, because all of us as kids, we always used to say why.
And as parents, you try and knock it out of the kids because you end up saying, because I told you so, and that's not the right way to do it. So I agree. I agree. The wise. Now, as far as keeping dashboard statistics, KPIs, especially on the safety side, Nick, and data and trends, what have been the biggest findings that you've managed, to come up with from all of that data that's gone in with the amount of flights that you've done?
One of the things that I'm really keen on, and we do touch on it, but I don't think the industry fully understands it yet. And I will be honest, I don't fully understand it yet, is understanding how much fuel can be saved by getting the right center of gravities in place. And we're moving into a time of, real focus on the environment at the moment. And we've got, like I say, an awful lot of data on a lot of flights about the center of gravity positions on the aircraft as well. Now, I don't have the skills personally to be able to work out how to save fuel in that respect. And I also think this data has not always been available to airlines before, so they're not used to looking at it as well. And I think a partnership between the two in terms of looking at fuel saving and understanding that fuel saving, I think would be absolutely fantastic. The other area is in terms of underload. Aircraft fly around under their maximum takeoff weight frequently. There's two ways. You could look at that and say, great, that's an underload. You could also argue that that's actually unsold cargo load. That's revenue leakage. Every kilo below maximum takeoff weight on an aircraft, you could argue, is revenue leakage. And using that data in order to work out, could we have got more cargo on the aircraft? Because it may be that the carriers are actually selling to the maximum that they're allowed, and there is a gap. And I've had this on one flight personally, one series of flights personally, where they came to us and said, is there any chance of fitting an extra 10 kilos onto the aircraft? Because they were at the maximum allowable payload. And I'm looking and thinking, I've got 10 tons of available payload today because the passengers haven't turned up in the numbers that were expected, and the winds are in the right direction, and we're on the right runway with the right obstacle clearance. And they were asking me if they really could accommodate a 10 kilo AOG, and I'm looking at them thinking, Mark, I'll accommodate another 10 tons. And getting that information flowing around in order to maximize those revenues. In a perfect world, every flight would be taking off with a 0 kilo underload.
Yeah, but that data is so important, Nick, because it can make commercial teams, it can help with the ops teams, it can help so much if they're getting that regular information, and at least it can help senior management ask questions of their teams as to why they're not using it in a more effective manner. And also, one of the things that used to annoy me so much is the amount of nil fits. When you got to repatriate units and all sorts, and then you'd go mad if you see a flight going out with empty space. It's crazy.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the key things that centralization can look after for you there, is that if you're controlling the ULDs moving around the system, I used to think it would be relatively easy to get the balance of the ULDs in the right place. It's not. It's one of those endless tasks that you have to work at every day, getting the right ULDs in the right place.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. But if you're looking at the operation from a centralized perspective, you're then looking at it in the other areas like the ULD management. So you're able to focus on getting that ULD management, the ULDs in the right place. It's an imperfect science, but it's one that's worth working on.
Yeah, no, brilliant. All right, sir, let you carry on.
Yeah, that's fine. What I would do is just the last point on this I would make before moving on to the next slide is just, it's a simple process, rigorously enforced as well. And I'm famous for saying that, but to me, take away the process steps. It's not just about having the system integrated with each other, but in certain cases, does that task really need to be done in the process? So if you've got a computer system with the data locked in it on, say, the actual dry up weight and the dry up index, the starting point, do you really need to go back and reference a paper manual every single flight? If you've got a process that actually says that the data that is in the system is locked in that system, it can only be accessed by a very small number of people to change it under a very tightly regulated regime, then you shouldn't need to check that task every time you come up with that aircraft registration. And it's simple things like that. Make the process as simple as possible. The training for a load controller can be anything up to 2 months, as you indicated earlier. if there are steps that don't need to be taken, you can slim down the training as well, and bringing, as you say, new people into the industry. Really, really important for them to be trained, really, really important for them to be focused on the safety aspects of it. But let's make their job simple. Let's not make it complex, any more complex than it needs to be.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Yeah. And
Nick.
the biggest
Oh.
learning was doing the shadowing and then doing it yourself, you know, in real time. That was where you really seen the difference, you know, all that time, like I said, I was with Lufthansa, who I think probably the best trainers of their time, and it was a 6-week course, you know.
Yep. Graciela, you were going to say something?
Yes, sorry. I was about to ask you, how can you identify those steps that that maybe you can like forget about them during the process in order to make things simple? It's
experience. So with the amount of carriers that we've brought into centralization, every time we start out asking a number of questions at the start of the process, and every time we do an implementation, that number of questions grows. So we actually reached a point now where it can take most of a day just to ask the questions, because these are all scenarios we've come across in the 14 years that the company's existed. And listening to the actual people doing the load control job, and listening to the various people, that's the way you do it. But it's not as simple as just saying, hey, we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. It's you've really got to sort of think about it, and it comes over time. Which
so
actually, go on.
Sorry. So I think maybe we should take some time to think about all of these questions, right? Like maybe a time during the week to think about those questions, and like to really think about taking them out of the process and then verifying if it's okay. Because sometimes I think, well, as a company, we do not take time to look on those things. Yeah,
and it involves getting people around a table. Sometimes in this process, you're getting people around a table that have never been around a table before. And, you know, a couple of classics here. One was the flight operations department saying that they wanted the estimated zero fuel weight accurately at -4 hours, and the cargo department saying that the cutoff is -3 hours. Well, if your cargo cutoff's -3 hours, you can't have an accurate zero fuel weight at -4 hours.
Yeah.
And actually, as we said when we got the people around the table, we can work with either, but we can't work with one at -4 and the other at -3. And it was addressing those issues and understanding. And the cargo department were arguing that the highest yield cargo was the short notice cargo that came in between -4 and -3. And the operations department said, yes, but we're burning off that yield with extra fuel that we're putting on because we have to make our decisions at -4. And some of the debates around that and around other issues were great debates to have, because they'd never been had before within that particular carrier.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, Nick, is having the debate and the discussion, because, you know, people do work in silos and they only look at what's affecting their backyard instead of the whole street. And if they had a broader outlook, you know, and they looked at the whole picture, and on top of what you said there about, you know, having the ops guys with 4 and the cargo with 3, you've also got cargo commercial who'd like to see it at 1.5 or 2. Absolutely. You know, constant pressures there.
There's one other point, just before I finish, there's one other point that I'd like to make, and it's just on that last slide. If we can just flip to the last slide.
Salem?
Oh,
that's it.
There you go. And it's a simple one. Mistakes will happen, errors will happen. That's human errors. It's the very nature of things. And occasionally there'll be errors will happen. And I'd just like to highlight the risk. Beware of a patchwork process change. If an error happens, there is a real, almost human desire to want to change a process to stop something happening again. And that process change should always be based on a root cause analysis and not on an emotional basis. Because otherwise you get into a position where you're changing a process and you create a process that itself breaks. And I'd use a real example of this that we've had in the past and still have with carriers today. an issue about opening the whole doors when they've got when they've got the hang on, 2 ticks. Yeah, real issue here when they've got opening whole doors because they've got dry ice. So if you've got dry ice in the aircraft and you're opening the whole doors for the offload, you've got to ventilate the holes to make sure that there's no loss of oxygen. And when that process was failing, we reached a sort of position where it's now a requirement on the onload plan to put a note to the ramp staff to remember to ventilate the holes. So what you've done is created a process to stop because another process failed, but in doing so have created another process that can fail as well. So rather than work out a root cause analysis and say, actually, should there be a checklist which the loaders are required to tick before offloading the aircraft, you've created a task to require a load controller on an inbound offload plan to put a message saying, remember to ventilate the holes. So if that load controller, for whatever reason, forgets to put that in there, then not only have you got a process failure with the ramp staff, you've got a process failure with the load control staff, and you're creating mistakes that don't need to be created, because actually putting a note on an offload or onload load plan to remind someone to do something like ventilate the holes, you're creating a process in itself that could fail, when the better way to have done it would be to have a checklist for those loaders to say, is there dry ice? Do I need to ventilate the holes?
Yeah, no, yeah, agree with that. Yeah, and again.
So I've taken up enough of your time there.
No, it's good, Nick. No, it's good. And you know, anything that's centralized, effective, and obviously you've got the data and the statistics to prove how much benefit it makes to organizations. Just out of curiosity, how are you seeing the demand for your services now?
The real risk at the moment is the speed of the recovery. And the problem is that the airlines can't tell us what the speed of their recovery is. And that's not the airline's fault, because they're reacting to booking data. And if passengers are booking, often now the booking is made at such short notice. Yeah. So it's very, very hard to know where to go. And I've heard from several people that actually the speed of the recovery can catch you out. And with there being less people in the industry at the moment, it's getting very hard to recruit people. And in my case, with a couple of months training requirement before a load controller is live, you've got a real risk there. If I bring load controllers into the business and the work is not there, obviously I've got a cost and no income. But likewise, doing it too late leaves me in a difficult position with being able to supply the customers. So it's trying to predict that recovery. That is without a doubt the biggest task at the moment, and it's the biggest task for every stakeholder in the industry. And that comes because people are making bookings much later than they are because they're fearful of restrictions changing. Yeah,
no, it's very, very, very difficult times at the moment, but you know, it's getting better, and it's going to get even stronger. Touch wood.
I think it will. I think we're on the road to recovery now, and this COVID is just going to be another thing that we have to learn to manage.
Yeah. And with that, Graciela, over to you. So now you've also got a few slides for us. Nick, well done. Thank you very much. And please feel free to jump in on any questions that Graciela puts up as well.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're just waiting for Salem now on the technical side. Just do his magic. Well done, Salem. Look at that, like magic.
Okay, well, that's my first slide. You know, we start with a short presentation. Can we move to the next slide, please? Well, I was about to tell you a little bit of me, but Chris already helped me with that. So I'm just going to go back really fast with that. I'm Graciela Gonzalez. I'm a lawyer. I have been in procurement for 4 years, and in procurement for aviation for 4 years too. So all of my, most of my experiences here. So I'm in charge of negotiating the domestic and international airports contracts. such as contracts of airports, passenger services, ramp services, security services, VIP lounges. And as Chris mentioned before, I'm in charge of negotiating the SLA for all of these contracts. So, well, I'm very into ground handling services. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I started reading this question, like what is now expected on digitization and data sharing to ensure operational efficiencies and quality of service delivery. And I started thinking about this and I said, well, I cannot answer this question by myself. So I asked some of my colleagues in the operations department, IT department, even in human resources. You know, I have like a lot of colleagues that I wanted to talk about this because I really wanted to take it from the ground handling services point of view. But as we are an airline and we have different departments, and as Nick mentioned at the very beginning, we cannot see ourselves as one department with different, like different departments and different activities, and that's it, because we're at the end, we are one flight, we are one airplane and one destination. So to answer this question, I went, I focused on Aeromexico, and I focused first on the past, then on the present, and then I will tell you some things about the future. So how was Aeromexico in the past? All of the technical information, manual schedules, bulletins, operational alert, everything was printed on paper. So if at some point a pilot needed some information, then he had to look on this 200, 500 pages manual, and it was really hard and it took a lot of time. So it was definitely not very convenient to have a question or to have an issue, you know, because they would take forever. And then, I talked about that with my colleagues of operations, and they said they had a lot of issues with that because everything was printed on paper. So then the processes were slow and complicated because of that. So the check-in process took a little longer because the boarding passes had to be printed, everything had to be printed. So it took a very long time to have all of the customers in line and then you know, like process every single case with different scenarios. And well, it took very, very long time. Then, oh, sorry about that.
That's right.
Okay, then the flight plan, and well, it was also printed, and well, in order to be delivered to the key people, well, it took a longer time because it could not be shared immediately. So well, it took time also. And well, for the weight and balance and cargo notifications, which is also connected to the weight and balance, it also took a very long time because everything had to be manually, and a lot of mistakes could be done by this non-digitalized process, because as Nick mentioned, if an activity is performed by a human, there could be errors anytime. So definitely it was a little bit like complicated to have a better, like a higher percentage of perfection. So then also talking with my colleagues of operations, they told me that the info was and is right now required in real time, like no-time navigation information. So that's information that cannot wait. So if we had no technology in the past, well, that was an issue too, because things could not be done by the minute. You had to wait and then follow the process. And well, and as a contract manager, I can tell you that also because of the use of paper, everything, contracts, agreements, permits, everything had to be printed in the past. And we had a lot of paperwork, tons and tons of paper everywhere. And it was really hard to find the information that we needed at some point. So, so I can tell you that in conclusion, in the past, the paper made the work harder and like a little bit complicated.
Yep, tell me about it. Yep.
Can we move to the next slide, please?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, then going to the present, I can tell you that we're getting so much better now because, for example, on the ops side, we have applications for pilots. They have this device and then they can check everything. So, I was actually last week talking with a colleague who told me that it was not only important to have everything on a digital thing, on a digital way, but also it is important, and it's like key that you can go through that material on your device, because if you have like a manual with 500 pages, it's really important that you have it there, but that you can also look for keywords, like exactly what you're looking for. And then that the device, that the app can take you to that particular paragraph that you're looking for, because it can, time is like, the timing is like the most important thing in aviation. Time is money. And if you can save time, then you're saving money too.
Oh yeah, so, absolutely agree. Searchable manuals, that's a game changer, where you can just type in the keyword and get to the paragraph that you want. That is an absolute game changer.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So it saves time and money. So
but it also makes people want to use it more.
Yes.
And if they want to use it more and start to enhance their own capabilities, then it's great. And if that's linked to minimum expectation documents for those positions, and the competencies are reviewed and tested on a regular basis, that's then how you make people be responsible for their own capability and ongoing competencies, which should be linked to some sort of appraisal or feedback.
Yeah, definitely. And it has worked very, very good among our pilots, and because they're happy with those. They all have these apps on their devices, and they are using them all the time. And we have heard from them that they are very happy about that, and they really want this app to be more developed, to have more features, and to have some, they are giving some ideas that might be developed later on their app. So it's like great.
Very good.
Then for the EFB, it's the EFB, sorry, it's displayed on a device, same device, and we have this great thing that we have multiple vendors and multiple app choices. So there's a world to choose, like we have a lot of choices. Then, going back to manuals for pilots, as I was telling you, it's really important that nowadays we have all of this information that I mentioned. In the past, it was all in paper. Then we have it on real time, and then we have it on a device that we can manipulate. So it has simplified the processes during the flight, pre-flight, during the flight, and then after the flight. And then going back to the airports, right now we have, we are working on self-check-in. I think other companies have developed this feature before, but we're really working on that. We were showing a great progress at some point, but after the COVID situation, the self check-in.
Yeah, it's more difficult with all the documentation and
Yes,
yeah.
it's actually not impossible, but I think it's harder because right now, I mean, if we all had the same vaccine card,
Yeah.
it would be like really easy, you know, to just have a general document and to make it digital. But it's taken well, yeah, we went a little bit back because we have to start again. You know, the needs change all the time, so this is one need that didn't help a lot with the progress, but right now we are working on it. So we still we were using this self check-in through our phones, you know, through a device, any kind of device where you can download the app, or you could either do self check-in in a kiosk inside the airport. But right now it's going, it's a little bit different because of that, and also because of security issues, because most of the time I think we haven't developed the right system that can identify, you know, like fake documents and all that. So it's really important to have a person, like an actual person, checking those documents. So we went a little bit back, but I think we're working on it. So, well, that's our present. Then we also have the self baggage drop. You can also, you know, like leave, well, you check in, then you get your boarding pass, and then you go to a different machine, and then you weight your baggage, and then you can put the stickers to it, and it leaves, you know, it gets the bag tags, and you can do it all yourself. I mean, before COVID, we were just about to go to have a process without people, or with the less possible people doing all of those processes. But then we went a little bit back.
But it should speed up now, because people are getting a lot more confidence and they appreciate why, and the sanitization and reducing paper. So all these issues are coming together now to give the momentum now for this change, which is a good thing.
Yes, and well, also I think that, well, I personally think that we cannot leave people out of this, because we really need a person-to-person you know, treat. So when there are no people behind the desks, it's just weird. Have you ever been in one of those places where there are no people, you just interact with machines and technology? Well, it's kind of cool, but at some point I think, well, after all of this COVID situation, I learned that we really need to be in touch with people at some point. So I guess people are needed. The customer service agents are definitely needed in the operation. So I think it's okay to have them. It's not okay to have them disappear.
But I think there's one key point out of that, which is that what the customer service agents that are left have to have those supervisory skills. They have to, you know, the simple tasks that people used to do are now automated. So those customer service agents that are there remaining have to be on a supervisory level, super user type level, because everybody that presents to them presents with a problem.
Yeah. And I think in the future, there's going to be the opportunity that a control center will see people having difficulties, whether it's to do with weights or labels or whatever it is, and they'll be able to speak in general terms to everybody, so everybody gets the benefit of that particular instruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and then we are transitioning to paperless activities, paperless. Everything is going paperless and green. So I think we're actually, yes. And because of the COVID situation, we had to e-sign everything, you know, because well, it's really important to mention that maybe in other countries, it is completely legal to just e-sign everything. But here in Mexico, well, it would be hard for the authorities to recognize an e-sign, because we're not ready for that, you know. So so the company used to refuse to e-sign papers because it was not like valid. It was not valid for our authorities, but right now I think we're doing it pretty well, and I think the authorities are about to go to the next step. So maybe at some point everything will be paperless.
Good.
Hopefully.
Good.
Can we go to the next slide, please? And then what are we expecting for the future? We are trying to, well, we want to improve connectivity because devices must be online all the times. I mean, sorry, at all times, you know, like if pilots need access to their devices, they need to be online. So that's one of the challenges we are facing right now. We want to improve and adapt the self-check-in process because, as I was telling you, things have changed a lot, and right now the customer service agents have to take care of a lot of different things than before, such as the vaccines, such as you know, oh, sorry, I forgot the name, the tests, the COVID tests sometimes, because in some other countries they require them, so they have to check a lot of different things. And we're really looking forward to a paperless era. You know, we want to make everything paperless. We really want to go green. And as you may know, we have the commitment of zero emissions for 2050. So it's not only based on because whenever we hear zero emissions for 2050, it's like, okay, it's all about the fuel consumption and using bio fuel, and it's not about that. It's about making the whole process green. We want to go paperless, we want to recycle, and we want to use the biofuel, but we want to make the whole process green.
Good.
Can we go to the next slide, please? And well, the challenges, as I told you before, well, COVID was a hard thing for us because we really need a lot of investment in this if we want to have all of our processes in a device. If you want to do everything digitalized, if you want to have it digitalized, we really we need investment. So it's going to take maybe a longer time than expected, but I think at some point we will get there. It involves money, costs, so same thing. It's all about the investment, and we really need our regulation ad hoc to the paperless culture, because as I was telling you before, maybe our regulation right now does not allow signatures, but we're really looking forward to make them valid. So that's it. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Graciela, one of the things I'd like to ask you, and obviously thanks for showing what the past, the present, and the future looks like. But one of your responsibilities, as you said there earlier, is the SLA.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not sure how many stations or outstations you've got, but it's quite a substantial network.
Yes, right now it's 47 international.
Yeah.
And well, I just got the domestic ones this year, so it's been really crazy, a crazy year. But there are like 30 domestic ones, so.
Yeah, so it's a fair amount. Now, one of the things that's driven me mad when I was looking after hubs or handling contracts is the amount of complexity and diversity and change and differences that every single airline sets, which is madness. And you look at some of them, and I was with the ICHC with IATA on the committee, and we did exercises, and it went from like 1 page to 30 odd pages. Now, handling staff, it's so difficult to remember that. You got one carrier, put your finger in your ear, one put your hand on your head, one, hold your nose, etc. You know, when you then look at people having to be responsible for safety, for security, you know, good service, etc., it's very, very difficult. Now, do you think it's possible that everybody starts to, you know, decomplex the way they do things for other parties to work on their behalf? So are you using like the ICHM simplified SLA format, or, you know, are you really trying to keep it as simple as possible?
Well, that's a hard question because, well, whenever I started in aviation, as I told you before, 4 years ago, and in those 4 years, I've seen a lot of changes. We used to have, well, right now we have a different department for everything, but I took a really great course in IATA, the one that that really showed me how to make a contract, the SGHA and SLA. And I found out that you really need to get every department involved whenever you are negotiating a contract, like a ground handling contract, because everyone's involved there. So in many companies, they just focus on, is it RAM services, and they just go for the RAM services, security services, and they just go for the security ones. And I have been changing this way because I found out that, for example, if you don't consider the cargo people for your RAM services contract, or even for the SLA, because you want well, you're expecting a certain levels of service. If you don't consider them, then at some point they are going to tell you, hey, did you consider this? Because maybe the company is not delivering as we would like to. So did you consider this, and did you consider that? And so I really try to involve every department whenever I am, you know, changing vendors or contracting, like having opening a new station. I always try to take every department involved.
Yeah, good. And to simplify where possible, to give everybody the feet on ground an opportunity and a chance to deliver consistency, because, you know, we do make things harder than we need, I think, as an industry.
Yes, and also I've seen very, very long SLAs, you know, they're like 30 pages, 40 pages, but I've talked to some other colleagues in other airlines, and we all have got to the conclusion that we really need to go as simple as possible, you know, like try to point your most important needs and what you are really expecting from the from your ground handler, and then make it as simple as possible, because I have 2 points here. First of all, I mean, if you have this very, very long list, I mean, why? You already have your manuals and everything. So I think the handler is like capable of reading the whole manual. So you don't really have to copy paste it on your contract. And second of all, like I've seen a lot of penalties there also. And that's the worst part, because I always tell my well, this is something that my my boss taught me. He told me once that it's not about punishing the the vendor, it's not about money, it's not about that. I mean, you tell the vendor what you need. If they tell you they can do it, it's okay. And if you see that they cannot do it, then you change the vendor. You know, it's not about charging for everything and giving them a very long list. It's just about performance. If they are not delivering what you expect, then you change it.
Yeah, but that's why the evaluation of your vendors in the first place is so important.
Yes.
So you don't make those mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like digitalization, data sharing, I mean, that's so critical. So I thank you both for endorsing the exercise. Now, if I was to ask you one last question before both of you finish, what would you like to see happen that would make a major impact on the business within the next 3 to 9 months? What would it be?
3 to 9 months is tricky because that's a very, very short time span and horizon. If I was looking slightly further out, what I would be saying is the use of IATA to develop some of these bridges and the industry standard bridges between systems, so that the manufacturers of the computer systems are building to a specification of bridge rather than it being individual suppliers and individual companies that are building a bridge that works for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it should be plug and play and Lego principle. So
yeah,
do what you want as long as you've got the pieces. And if you get new pieces, they all fit as well. So
yeah. But that's got to be an industry consensus to build those bridges.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And Graciela?
Well, I think that airlines, vendors, authorities, manufacturers, and also passengers have to work together in order to make this to help this transformation happen. To make it and also to make it sustainable. I wanted to tell this on my last slide, but I forgot I had it. So I really think that we all really have to work together, starting inside of the company, in order to have to make this work.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you mentioned there about sustainability and transformation, and at the end of the day, it's care that will make it happen and make it work. Everybody has to care a lot more about what they do and why they do it. So with that message, as we leave, guys, listen, thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. Thanks for the presentations and your input. And, we wish you great success, because if everybody has success, then the whole supply chain will be appreciated even more than it's received the recognition over the last 18 months to 2 years. But it's got some tough times ahead, but very exciting times. So brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.